Hello, welcome to another lab of the course Nanophotonics. This one is going to be about MIT photonic bands and the software package. Okay, so to run it on your Windows operating system, you need to have Cygwin, and you need to install Cygwin basically. Once you install Cygwin, it's gonna look like this, of course, when you open it up for the first time. And it will also install itself under C. I'm not sure if you can choose the uh, location of your installation, but it's going to be most likely be installed under C, under Cygwin. And I generally work under home, my name, this work file. And here I prepared a couple of examples from you. Actually, these examples were taken from the web page of the software package that I just mentioned. So you can find them over there too. Just to go over the basics with you, it's a very simple program. So don't expect any user interface. The application files are in the format of CTL, so it's like .cdl, as you can see. So if you right click and say edit with Notepad++, it will open the that little text file up, another sort of a text file. So I recommend you also to download and use Notepad++. That's the name of the software. It's much more convenient than your ordinary notepad, as you can see here. It gives you the lines, the row number, for example. Also highlights the important points like, okay, these parentheses, they do match, so you don't really leave one parenthesis open or something like that. Okay, coming back to the program. The first example is about a square lattice of rods in air. Just like that, just a very simple 2D arrangement. And it's a periodic arrangement, of course. We are looking for the bands, the photonic bands, but how many of them? This first line designates that the number of bands that we're looking for is 8. Okay, so you could really go for a higher number or a lower number. 8 is the number that's entered as a parameter here. The nice thing about this program is you don't really need me to explain it to you the whole day. It also very self-explanatory. The second thing that you need to do is, of course, to set up the points of your scan. What points? Well, we always said that we need to scan it along the K, the wave vector. And we need a starting point and an end point. In this case, for this two-dimensional schematic, it's going to be the same point. The starting and the end points are going to be the same points. They're going to be what's called gamma points, as we've seen in the lecture notes. So this gamma point is assigned to be 0, 0, 0. So we are scanning the first Brillouin zone, or the irreducible zone of the whole Brillouin zone. This will give us the whole information about our structure, the photonic crystal structure. As you can see, our third entry is always 0. The reason is this is still a two-dimensional case, and I'm sure that if you dive into it more, there are three-dimensional or quasi three-dimensional examples out there too using the band package. But for this application, it's a two-dimensional crystal, and we're going to be just using 0 as the last entry, since we're not really looking for out of the, like, in the propagation along the third dimension. But as for the others, we are scanning along as we described in the lecture notes, from the gamma point to X, then to M, and then returning back to gamma. Okay, along this, we can't just like sample one point and be satisfied with that. What I mean by that is, like, we can't just jump from gamma point to X and then to M and then the gamma point and get our 8 bands for these specific points. That would just give us a very crude calculation. So we need to interpolate between the K points. So coming from gamma to X, for example, we need to interpolate 4 more K points. Okay, making it 5 points, including the first gamma 00 point as well, till we reach X point. So this will enable us to get better band diagrams, basically, with higher resolution in terms of the K spacing, the wave vector spacing. So if they're evenly spread out, that will look better. Also with high precision too, so you will be able to know where the bands cross, where they're exactly located. Okay. So far, so good. We set the number of bands we're looking for. We set the scan directions for the crystal. We also said that we're going to be interpolating between these scan locations. The next thing we need to do is we need to set up the geometry. We need to tell that we are going to get information about these square lattice of rods. The square information is already here, as you can see, since we define it like that. It knows that it's a lattice, square lattice, but it doesn't know what it's going to scan, what kind of structure lies inside this crystal. We're going to say that it's a cylinder. Okay, so this is how we set up the geometry. Okay, you don't really need to know all the details about these the programming language. It's very simple, as you can see, and if you do, you can create new geometries as well, but you don't really need to know the details. Once you create your cylinder, it asks you to put where the center will be, like you put it in the middle, and then you need to determine the radius of that, and then the height. Height, in our case, for the 2D case, it's infinitely long in the third dimension. And we're saying that it's a dielectric material with a constant epsilon that's equal to 12. Okay, next thing, we say that, okay, we're going to be looking into a two-dimensional structure. We have to define that too. We're doing that by saying, okay, so this is 1, 1, X and Y are 1, and the last entry is no size, so this is going to be a two-dimensional problem. And next thing you need to do is to determine the resolution. That is the meshing of your geometry, and we define that to be 32, but you can increase that up, like you can go up to 64, since this is just a two-dimensional case. That will determine the basically also the validity or the accuracy of your bands as well. And then you need to say, okay, are you going to run? Okay, so it says TE here. I said TM, but we can switch back to TE too. So you can run for both of these cases. Just be careful. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's the convention is the opposite way with respect to the TE and TM bands we defined in the lecture notes. So it's, if it's talking about TE, then it's probably referring to our TM. Might be something like, I'm not certain about that. I have to check it up. I haven't used this software for some time, so can't remember that detail. But we can easily check it by looking at the photonic bands as well and compare it with what we expect, basically. Okay, so the program is ready. Then that's how we run the basically program for TE mode. So if you don't say anything, it will collect both TE and TM modes together. So how you run it? Basically, you run it like this. You just go to the this prompt page, and then MPB is the name, of course. And sorry, so you first need to locate the folder that you're looking for. So I'm working under work. These are simple, well-known MS-DOS kind of, actually it's coming from Unix, of course, commands. And then under work, okay, so there's, okay, I'm already there. And these are the things under that folder. So I have to work under the folders that says example. Let me see. It's under work. Why couldn't it locate it? Examples. That's the name of the folder is examples. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. So I also have some other examples for you to run. I'll put them available there on the web page, but as I told you, you can really find them over the website that I told you. All right, so the band examples, so MPB example. So good thing about Unix is you don't have to really fill in the whole name. It does fill in for you if, of course, it's the only choice. In this case, it's not the only choice. As you can see, we have lots of example ones. And that's the input file. We were going to say, run it and give me an output. That's going to be the output file now. I actually overwrote the example2 file. Okay, now let's go to the example2 file then. Okay, so as you can see, it did output a lot of things here, a lot of data. And there are some important things, like it did find some gaps, and the gaps are here. Like it's saying from the second band to the third band, I have a small gap here. From the fourth to the fifth band, I have another small gap. Looks like it doesn't really show up any bands for this polarization. Okay, so let's do the following because that will be hard to visualize. So let's say TM this time. And let's run it again for the TM case. Yeah. So if we go to the example2 file now. All right. So now it says, yes, it could find really wide band gaps. That's like 39%. That's a large band gap, and a 3%. So it's between the first two bands, basically from band 1 to band 2. But as you can see, it's very crowded. So what we can do is we can just say grep. Let me remind myself grep from grep the TM frequencies. Yes, this is basically gonna grab all of those lines that start with TM frac. So these are the eigenvalues that I'm looking for. I don't want to bother myself with the rest of the data. So I'm going to get the these, and I'm gonna write it as an output file. That could be a valid output file too. So I'm just gonna get these tmfrec portion, and let me see. Yes, so example 2 is now the output. I'm sorry about that. So it seems that we have to finalize it pretty soon. My Windows is restarting. I'm sorry about that. So example 2, TM output. We have to be careful about because what I said here is output the file folder information to this specific file. So now I got rid of all that horrendously crowded information that really clouded my view. Now I'm left with the eigenvalues. So what I can do at this point is something I found, but that's probably not the best way of doing it. So you just hit Control F, and then instead of the tmfrecs, replace it with basically nothing, and say replace all. So at least we got rid of that too, and then get rid of this whole thing as well. And let's shift it one step up. So we are left with the data, the real data, and I'm saving this file. Nice. I'm gonna take it to somewhere easily accessible. That's gonna be my desktop basically. And now I'm gonna start my Octave, because I don't have, sorry, I clicked the wrong thing. This Octave, because I don't have basically MATLAB on this computer. If you do have it on your computer at the same time, it would be very useful and will make it much easier for you to process the information. So as I told you, this is a free program, so there's no real interface, and you have to do a lot of things yourself. So if we go to desktop, that's where I put the file, and that's this one. So loading the data. Now the data is loaded. Nice. Let's look at the data. Display. And data looks like this. Okay, so I have along the scan, okay? So I didn't really discuss this with you, but this is doing it along the scan. So let's go back to the output file here. So what it's giving me is the following. The specific columns, the TM frequency starts with that, K index, scanning along these K points, okay? Starting from 0, ending at 0, 0, 0, and increasing the K wave vector along the crystal symmetry of the photonic crystal. K index, K1, corresponding to the X component, that's the Y component, and that's the Z component. And then my bands will start from here, okay? So I have garbage data. Actually, it's not garbage. I shouldn't say it like that, because that's gonna be my X coordinate system, okay? Especially this Kmac will be my main, like, K vector, and these are going to be my eigenvalues. So let's go back to our case. So let's look at it. That's my K index, if you remember. That's my Kx, Ky, Kz, Kmac. Look at the Kmac. So it's taking the square of the whole thing. So if like 0.1, it's 0.1, because I don't have contribution from the others. But beyond 0.5, I have 0.5 from here, 0.1 from here. So it becomes, if you do the math, 0.5 square plus 0.1 square. And the square root of all that, Kx square, Ky square, square root of that will give me the Kmac and then I have basically the bands. So let's do the following. Let us plot the bands. So what I'm gonna be interested in will be in my workspace, that's also called example to TM. So I loaded it to my workspace. This has the same name. My X should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes. That's my X. That's my KX basically. Okay. And the next one, oh, sorry, will be my first band basically. Okay, this is something I didn't expect. So let's plot it this way instead. Okay, so it looks like I will have to tackle with the X coordinate system again myself. Okay, so this is my first band. Along the X, we didn't assign anything, so that's why it's not coinciding with 0. It has to. Apparently, we have to tackle that problem of X coordinate system ourselves as well. Let's keep it there, and let us say plot the next band too. Now we have plotted the second band. So now you see that we have an emerging band gap. The band gap is between these two. But this plot does not make it justice, because this K is not the same with this K, this larger K at the end. It looks the same. So what I'm saying is I have to also do the X coordinate system in a fine way and then plot it that way better. Anyway, so I still can see vividly the emergence of the band gap. So if we continue plotting the next ones, right? I'm not gonna say anything here. So 9, 10, 11, 12. Let's see how it looks like right now. Yeah, so I have a wide band gap here and a small band gap here appearing. That was the data that I also had taken from here. It said like 3%, so that's like a narrow one. It's between 4th and the 5th band, but the first band gap was the larger one between 1 and 2. So let's look at it. 1 and 2 gives me a large band gap, and 2, 3, 4, and 5. Yeah, that's really the case. 4 and 5 gives me a shorter band gap. I also would like you to pay attention to one other thing. If I just, let me see if I can, yeah, okay. So you see, like here, it's really quite crude. Like we tried to put 4 interpolation points starting from 0, 0, 0 point, gamma point to, for example, X point. It looks, it's almost like a linear, just a normal line kind of thing, without giving you a lot of curvature. That's what I'm trying to say. So to increase the curvature, especially in these crude locations, you have to do what? You have to go to your code, and you will have to say, you will interpolate not 4, but like, let's say 8. That will put additional points there, and it will look much more like a smoother curvy shape, and that's what it's supposed to look like. Anyway, so we get our nice band gaps and nice looking two-dimensional bands as well. So what I would like you to do is to apply that to other cases too, and try to get it for a triangular lattice this time, for example. Instead of a square lattice, now get the bands and the band gaps for the triangular lattice system. That's very easy, and the codes will be also there as well. Let's do the following. Let's run this, the fifth one. This has a defect band gap. So the number of bands is very high, and there's this very specific reason for that. We're just gonna run this code, and it will make sense as we run it. But look at this now; it doesn't say 1 1 anymore, but 5 5. This makes the lattice, the unit lattice, to be 5 times larger in one size. Together with that, it's like area-wise, it's 25 times larger. Okay, let's run it. That was the fifth one. So let's say that's going to be my out. Yes. So we are trying to locate a defect band this time. Let's look at our code while it's doing the calculation. It's taking slightly longer time because it's doing it for 50 bands and a larger size, basically. But since this has gone up, our resolution, we really couldn't afford setting it to 32 again, so we set it to a relatively smaller number, 16. We're again defining our cylinders with the same radius, okay? Remember that we had the band gaps last time, but yeah, so this is, we will see. It's the same square lattice. Yeah, that's the same example we've run in the first example. We just create a defect for this crystal. And while we're going to be introducing the defect, well, we just remove one of the dielectric material in the middle and replace it with air instead of an epsilon 12 material. Okay. This helps us to duplicate the main element over the whole 5 times 5 matrix, and we don't really need to write the same code over and over again. So otherwise we needed to write it for 25 times. Yeah, so we ran it for TM modes, just like we did last time. Let's remind ourselves where our bands resided. It was between the first and the second, basically. This and this. So let's check that. So stops, I mean, the band gap stops at around 0.4. That's again a normalized frequency, of course, and starts around roughly here. Can I put a grid on that? Yeah, but still not helping too much with this another free software, Octave. Okay, so I am searching for a band, the defect band between these two, the first and the second bands. All right, so let's get back to the code. It did calculate it. So just put it to the 5 out. Let's look at it. Example 5 out. There's also a lot of data here. But in this case, MPB does not boldly go and calculate the whole bands for you, but within that first 50, intelligently it just looks at one single band, and that's going to be my defect. This is my defect band. So it's looking at it at a point 0.5, 0.5. So remember that point corresponded to M point. Okay, so let's see. Our endpoint was somewhere like here, and the defect frequency is 0.3773, so it should be within the band gap. That's really the case, yeah. The defect band stays inside the band gap. First, let's do something slightly different. So let's look at the first, the epsilon, the dielectric distribution. So while it's running every time, also outputs this kind of a file like epsilon 1 example 1 epsilon. I did run a previous example 2 for you, but I overwrote that file accidentally. Anyway, so for this case too, when you run your code, it will also output an epsilon file like example 5 epsilon in this case. It's supposed to be visualized by H5 utilities. That's another compression software for image processing. But I could not install it on my Windows computer, honestly. The guidelines are there on the web page, also on MIT's web page. Hopefully you can install it. In the worst case, don't worry, you still have another solution, and I will also make it available on our web page too. That's called HDF View. So once you install it, it enables you to see the data inside, basically. And this is the data. Unfortunately, another free software doesn't really give you the data immediately, but you have to export it. I'm going to export it to, again, desktop. That's the most convenient place. Let's say epsilon. Convenient because I'm going to import it to my Octave. So there you go, epsilon. Let's load it too. Yeah, I did load it. Now it's here. But this is a matrix, and let's plot it with surf command. So epsilon. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, so it did put it like this. So you see what I mean by the defect. We did it for a single square lattice system initially. Now we are doing it for the defect that is placed in the middle of a 5x5 array, 25 elements, and the element missing is in the middle. It's supposed to be 12 epsilon 12 here, and air here everywhere for the remaining part. But here the rod or the cylinder is forgotten. So that's how we created the defect. And that's settled around a resonance frequency of 0.37, if I remember right. Yeah, 0.38 or so, which also resides inside the band gap. Okay, let's do one more thing, because if you remember, the code did not just end there. It didn't end by saying just run, but it also said, and I can immediately see that you guys got it already. Outputs the fields too. So it outputs the fields for the 25th band. The 25th band corresponds to my defect band. Okay, so this is a detail, but how do you guess that it's going to be on the 25th band, but not like 24th band? Well, due to the band folding, because of the 5 times 5 arrangement, our bands will not look exactly the same as before, but they will be folded. Okay, it will make more sense once I show you the examples that I ran for another case. And the defect will be always the 25th band, right in the middle of 50. Due to the fact that it's a 5 times 5 array, 5 times 5 makes 25th too. So you can remember it that way as well. Anyway, so it outputs the electric field and also the electric field flux. So let's look at those as well. It's gonna output it. Sorry, I clicked the wrong button again. It did output it here under the same work folder, and its name is, yes, its name is this one, basically. And once I double click it, HDF view will be initiated one more time. Here. That's not the thing. Yeah, so I have two things. Like the first one was the electric field, the other one was the D field, if you remember the displacement. Let's output both of them again to desktop. So I don't know which one is which, honestly. Just gonna say E field for this one, and the other one will be my D field. Nice. Coming back to my octave, let's import E. Oh, that's easy. Sorry. I don't want that. Anyways, can stay there. So I want to import these two, E and D. Okay, so these are going to be field distributions. So we have to serve them as well. So let's say first the E field. Of course, you have to determine your X and Y, but roughly it looks like this. So you see, let's plot them together. Figure serve epsilon. Click the wrong button one more time. Okay, so we can keep it here. So why didn't it allow us to? Oh, of course. Yeah, so this was how the crystal looked like, and figure that's how our field looks like now. undoubtedly the field is enhanced in the inside the cavity. And we can also look at one more thing. The displacement field. Yeah, so since that is more like the power, so that's like more intensified compared to the single E. And let's put all these things together. So I have the field distributions also with the lattice distribution, so that gives us information about all these things nicely. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is, if I can go back to my desktop, is this. I did run another software to visualize the defect band. Basically, the ordinary band diagram will, of course, look like this. This looks funny. Anyway, so it has a band gap between the first and the second band again. Okay. And if you look at the, like I told you, the arrangement, the array, 5 times 5 array, in this case, it will create this band folding. This is how the bands are folded. Okay, so while you're trying to go to the first band gap, you will have to go through all the calculations of lots of bands that you didn't really have to calculate. This is called a supercell method, and supercell method requires you to calculate all these previous bands to reach it up to the 25th band. But that's where our little bands resides, and as you can see, it's a very thin band that makes it very, very narrow in terms of the frequency. Yeah, so that concludes our discussions about this band. Hope to see you in another one.